So, you're thinking about moving to Vermont. Well, let's slow down a little bit. It's not all charming fall days and maple creamies in Vermont. There are some negatives, and especially if you're coming from places like Boston, New York City, Phoenix, and other densely populated areas that we're working with a lot of people from, there might be a bit of a culture shock. I'm going to be getting into that so you can be prepared for the negatives of Vermont. Hey, if you're new to this channel, my name is Jacob Barnes with eXp Realty, and if you want to be the first one to hear about what's going on in Vermont, hit that subscribe button and click the bell for notifications. I work with people from all over the country looking to buy or sell real estate in Vermont, and I would love to hear from you if you need help. I'd be happy to get a call, text, or email from you. My number and email are all in the description below, so reach out if you want to make a smooth transition to Vermont. As I said, we're covering the negatives of Vermont today, and the number one negative is the lack of high-paying job opportunities. Vermont is rural with a small economy largely consisting of tourism, agriculture, small-scale manufacturing, and hospitals. There's not a lot of high-paying jobs like tech or finance, so especially younger people around my age get out of college and decide they can't justify the cost of living in Vermont compared to what they'll make at a job. Sadly, most of my friends growing up have either left Vermont or are planning to leave Vermont. I plan to stay in Vermont for many reasons, and I think there are plenty of opportunities if you are willing to pursue them, but most of the high-paying jobs in Vermont are in hospitals, remote jobs, or the greater Burlington area or other more populated areas. This is why I sell houses to a lot of people who work remotely. They can have the benefit of high-paying jobs while living in Vermont rather than having 3 local jobs like working at a ski resort, coffee shop, and weed dispensary. The second biggest negative, also related to why people often don't stick around in Vermont, is the crippling amount of taxes. According to Statistics Online, which I'll link in the description, Vermont has the 3rd highest tax burden in the whole United States, behind New York and Hawaii. That isn't fun. This year, the entire state faced education property tax increases of at least 12%. Some towns up to about 18 to 20%, and it's looking like they will likely go up even more next year. Vermont does have highly rated schools, but it seems the financial breakdown around them is a bit broken. I know a lot of people who have faced large property tax jumps as home values have gone up a lot along with the tax rates. There is a homestead tax deduction for those who are living in their house full-time and make below a certain income, but with property, income, and sales tax, Vermont is highly taxed. Although the IRS could get them in trouble, a lot of Vermonters shop in New Hampshire to avoid sales tax. Vermont isn't rated one of the most expensive states to live in based on the cost of housing, services, and groceries, but our taxes are always increasing, it seems like. The third big negative of Vermont is our harsh winters. Vermont winters can be calm some years and negative 20 degrees the next. Especially if you choose to buy a house in the mountains near a ski resort, it can get pretty frosty. We don't have low-lying coastal areas, but following Lake Champlain includes some of the more temperate areas. Some years we get the highest average snowfall of any state in the US, and other years we might not get that much snow. Some years people complain about not having enough snow to snowmobile or ski with for very long, but other years it seems like winter will never end. Seasonal depression is a real thing in Vermont, and going to Florida or South Carolina for a week, or the whole winter, also known as snowbirding, is most Vermonters' way of coping. Growing up, my family would always go down south for winter school break, and most of the other families did as well. Being pale from lack of sun and dealing with a cold for 5 to 6 months can get tiring. So can driving in the winter when we get lots of snow or freezing rain. Thankfully, Vermont is pretty prepared if you live near main roads, but if you live down a remote dirt road, you might have longer delays. I also have a video on how to prepare for Vermont winters if you want to watch something more in depth. Number 4 on the list of reasons not to move to Vermont is that Vermont is boring. At least, if you're not into being outside a lot, then there might not be a lot for you to do here. What I do for fun is play soccer, pickleball, snowboard, and have friends over for bonfires or card games. A lot of people in Vermont like to hike, mountain bike, ski, kayak, camp, all outdoor stuff. If you like clubs and events to fill your evenings or weekends, there's just not a lot. If Vermonters want to go see big name singers or comedians, we have to travel to Massachusetts or New Hampshire several hours away. To me, I like the slower paced life and not a lot of traffic, but some people find the lack of things to do enough to make them leave. I know people who move to Vermont cities, but even our biggest areas just don't have the amenities that a lot of people are looking for. If you're coming from a mega city, it's just going to be a lot different. You can't just walk out and go to a good restaurant at 1 a.m. like so many places. Some places in Vermont is even a struggle to find a gas station open past 10 p.m. Many restaurants in Vermont are only open about 3 to 5 days a week because they don't get enough business to be open the whole week. As far as malls and shopping, there isn't a ton. We have okay grocery stores and stores like Walmart and Home Depot, but we only have one Costco and one Trader Joe's, which are the two stores I like to shop at. They're both in the Burlington area, of course. Number 5 might be a little controversial, but politics in the secular culture of Vermont is a reason some people might not want to move to Vermont. Vermont is a very blue state. Although we have a semi-Republican governor, he's overruled by the Democratic and progressive supermajority on most major issues, it seems. There isn't a lot of balance with politics in Vermont, and as a lot of people are moving to Vermont for reasons like politics and climate change, we're getting more and more blue. Some people love that about Vermont, and others might not. Vermont has a lot of farmers and small towns that aren't so progressive, but overall, this is the way the state leans. As for the secular side of things, Vermont is ranked the least religious state in the country, and I think that explains the average Vermonter way of life. Live and let live. Number 6 on the list of reasons to not move to Vermont is flooding. Vermont has had a massive amount of flooding recently, with flooding in 2023, 2024, Hurricane Irene in 2011. If you watch the news, like a lot of people, it is likely on your mind as you look at housing. Barrie, Montpelier, Plainfield, St. Johnsbury, Ludlow, and many other places all got really badly flooded. Many houses were destroyed, and even a couple people died, sadly. While the majority of Vermont homes and people were totally fine, roads and bridges in many towns were destroyed and people had to find back roads to get around some places. Even my basement got flooded in 2023 and it had no history of ever flooding, so I've been told. And it's not fun to deal with the damage and stress that comes with it. In Vermont, home sellers are now required to fill out a mandatory flood disclosure that discloses if they have ever had flooding, flood insurance, or are in a flood zone. I definitely am more cautious about homes that have bad grading around the house, are close to rivers and streams, or have had water issues in the past. Vermont has a lot of old houses with dirt floors and sump pumps, so I don't say stay away from every house that gets a little damp in the basement, but frequent flooding or water in a finished basement is a hard pass for me. If you've looked at moving to Vermont, you've probably heard about mud season, which is another reason some people avoid Vermont. To be honest, this one won't really affect you unless you will need to live on or drive down a lot of dirt roads. In Vermont, dirt roads can get really bad in the spring and in the late fall when the ground starts to freeze and thaw, and some dirt roads just turn into big mud pits with large ruts that can bottom out your car, and a decent amount of people get stuck every year. And if they don't, then their car suspension will likely suffer instead. With good tires and relatively careful driving, I've never gotten stuck in mud myself, but some roads just become pretty much unpassable and unusable in mud season. Class 4 roads are not town-maintained roads, and these especially are something to avoid in mud season. Home sellers in Vermont are legally required to disclose if their house isn't on a town-maintained road, but you want to make sure that you find that out. Another negative about Vermont is how far apart everything is. For example, I drive an hour to go to Costco and Trader Joe's, an hour to the airport, over half an hour to church, 20 minutes to the gym, Walmart, or the hospital, and I'm one of the Vermonters who lives closer to amenities and the highway. That might not sound like a lot to you, and it doesn't bother me that much, but if you live in a more rural area, you could be a lot farther away from an airport, hospital, or shopping. There's also not a ton of great restaurant options close by as they are spread all around the state. The Burlington area, of course, has more options, and so do some of the more touristy towns. I recently had some buyers tell me that an hour of driving to them is normally straight highway driving. Around Vermont, you could be going through areas of 30, 40, and 50 miles per hour if you aren't on one of our few highways. Our only real highways, Route I-89 and I-91, are 65 miles per hour in most places, but slows down to 65 miles per hour around busier exits. In both New York and New Hampshire around us, the speed limits are often faster than ours. If you are coming from out west or down south, where the roads are straight and flat, the curves and hills of Vermont will be different for you, and that's largely why our speed limits are a lot lower. We also don't really have big fancy rest stops along the highways. The 9th and final reason that you wouldn't want to move to Vermont is that we don't have much housing available at all in recent times. The past few years, and even today, there are not a lot of options. I was looking in a large area around Manchester, Vermont, and in my search, which had some filters, there were 14 options available, and 7 of the 14 were built before 1850. Over half the options for this one buyer looking under 500,000 were over 170 years old. That is actually crazy. There's not a lot available all around the state, and if your budget is below 300,000, you'll see your options are very limited. You'll mostly be looking at old houses that could have asbestos, lead paint, or knob and tube wiring, or you might see some hunting cabins and a few areas that do actually have more affordable housing, like Rutland or Barrie, or up on the Canadian border like Derby, Canaan, or Richford. If you want to see what is available in your criteria, reach out and I will send you everything that is available, and I can do my best as a realtor to find you your ideal house. But don't get your hopes up that you will find what you want if you are looking for something very specific. You might have to compromise on area, price, age, or condition of the house or the house layout to actually be able to find something. Now, those are the 9 reasons why Vermont might not be for you. If you got through all those and are still interested in moving to Vermont, reach out and I'd be happy to help you find a great house anywhere in Vermont. Also, check out my video on the good things about Vermont. I'm also licensed in New Hampshire and can refer you to other excellent agents if your search is more broad. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends and family who are interested in moving to Vermont. See ya!